How's it going, everybody? And welcome to another episode of the Barely There podcast. We are getting so close to the regular season. It's within striking distance. Absolutely excited to get into it today. I'm Duke Coughlin. You can follow me on Twitter at @PodGuyDuke. I'm joined as always by the Ayatollah of Capicola, Lucas Perfetti at LucasPerfetti46. You can also follow the podcast at Barely There Pod on Twitter. You can subscribe to us really anywhere you're listening right now. Any of your favorite podcasts and apps, wherever, don't matter. But anyway, a lot of stuff to get in here, so I'll keep the intro short. But we have the 53-man roster. We have some waiver claims. Ryan Poles really went wild with the waiver claims, man. Alex Leatherwood was a guy that was being talked about the entire NFL. He is officially a Chicago Bear, as well as Armon Watts, who was a guy who was a very intriguing prospect coming out of Minnesota, who really kind of fell to the team moving defensive philosophy, but a potential starter there. But before we get into that, Lucas, Bears versus the Browns. The Bears go 3-0 in the preseason. Justin Fields, speaking of 3-0, going 3-0 on the touchdown interception ratio against the starting Cleveland Browns secondary that we always hear so much about. How are we feeling about that, Lucas?
I'm feeling great. I will say we can't say that their whole starting cast was there, but they had starters there. And at the end of the day, dude, I think it's bullshit when people say it was just the preseason. Like, the preseason means a lot more than you think. Every coach wants to win. Every player wants to win. You're still playing a game. Like, it's the same idea as if you played high school football in a non-conference game. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really count towards your playoff seeding or anything like that, but it's still something you want to fucking win. And I think it was nice because we saw the inverse finally. I feel like in those first two games, the second and third team kind of won the game for us against the other second and third teams. Offense didn't look great, but this time it really was that first team offense and first team defense that looked very fucking good. So super encouraging. Like, even Justin Fields said it was a confidence booster going into the season. Like, that's exactly what you wanted to see going into it. Kurt Warner actually does a really good breakdown on Justin Fields' performance. Like, as much as I love Justin Fields, the way he looked, like, he puts throws on the money. He goes through it really well and explains the concepts and things of that nature, to kind of show you like some of the concerns that I also have with Justin Fields that other people may have voiced. I know you can't really voice concerns about Justin Fields without getting fucking attacked on Twitter, but like, he does need to get, at the end of the day, dude, he has every tool to be an elite quarterback, but the think of like the Drew Brees and the Peyton Mannings, like, even though they would hit you deep, that death by 1,000 paper cuts is a real thing. And it's something that you need to operate in the NFL. Throwing an accurate deep ball, it's beautiful. I personally, like, when you talk about the placement of Justin Fields' deep ball, it reminds me of vintage Aaron Rodgers. I hate to say it because I fucking hate Aaron Rodgers, but like, ball placement wise, I don't think there's many quarterbacks better than him right now in the league, but he really needs to work on that, distributing the ball, recognizing things faster, and it'll come. I personally believe that everything you've heard about him in terms of work ethic, it's all there. He had a mulligan first year with Matt Nagy, who I don't think he understands defenses too well, to be honest. It's probably a part of why he fucking sucked at game planning. So I think it will come, but definitely got to just get the ball out a bit quicker.
Yeah, no, and I feel like that's something that Getsy's really been working with him on, is being able to get that ball quicker and being able to step into his throws. I know that's definitely been a point of emphasis, kind of with his footwork this year and his throwing motion, is really just making sure he's planting his front foot forward, because the arm talent's obvious. Like, he is a guy, like, it's funny that you bring up a guy like Aaron Rodgers. I don't want to go too nuts on that just because, Justin's young and Packer fans will fucking, that just gives them an excuse to be in our DMs. But and nobody wants that. But like, he has the arm talent to be able to throw off balance, you know what I mean, and be able to throw off his back foot. But I think what Getsy's really trying to drive into him right now is like, you don't have to do that. Like, make your life a little bit easier, because when you drive your foot and make a throw, Justin, there are not a lot of quarterbacks in this league that can make those throws down the field, like, simply put. And if you can make throws like that down the field, intermediate routes are just going to come. You know what I mean? Like, it's not something like it's going to be, you don't have to reinvent the wheel there. It's like, just take a little bit less off a ball, because the guy is going to have a little bit easier time catching it in the intermediate routes, as he breaks off coverage. But I really liked what I saw from Justin. I like I really like what he's doing, like just kind of on the fly. That's one thing I'm noticing a lot more than what we saw with Matt Nagy's offense. Is he seems a lot more comfortable when he's moving out of the pocket. And I know that's something that kind of gets used against him a little bit. It really gets used against a lot of mobile quarterbacks, but I think Justin does a great job of not panicking, feeling like he has to like take off and run. But I think what he does is something that our boy Mitch used to do really well when he was allowed to do it, was being able to move the pocket with his feet and allow him to make a better throw on the run and be able to set something up on the fly. And that's something I see a lot with him and Cole Kmet. I think they're building a really strong chemistry. I'm pretty sure I said it a couple episodes ago, but the final training camp practice I went to, my play of the day was basically a play that blew up and something that Justin set up with Cole Kmet down the field, just kind of on the fly, and it ended up working for like a 35-yard completion. And that's kind of what that touchdown reminded me of against Cleveland. Was Justin rolled out, he kind of saw something opening up in the zone to the top right corner. Cole obviously saw it too. He kind of directed traffic to get him there, tossed him a ball, and that's beautiful. Like on the surface, that looks like Justin Fields just throwing a ball to a wide open receiver, and that's not necessarily a difficult play to make. But there was so much that set up that play. And I like that you brought up Kurt Warner, because I was watching Total Access the Sunday morning after the Browns game, and Steve Mariucci made the exact comment that it's like, well, that's an open wide receiver. Like, what do you expect? Of course he has to make that throw. And I swear to God, Kurt Warner was about to jump over the table, because he's a guy who understands what it takes to set up a route like that and a play on the fly like that. And he's like, can you make that throw? Can you set up that throw, Steve? Like, it's impressive what he just did.
Yeah, it's basic math, right? Like, how long is a play supposed to last? 4 seconds? You know what I mean? I'm talking about from the point the ball is thrown. Defenses are getting to the quarterback faster and faster. So you want to look at guys like Ben Roethlisberger, that I think last year he had 3.1 seconds it was taking him to release the ball. So just basic math, it's defensive backs are trained to cover for 4, maybe 6 seconds. You get into that point where you completely move the pocket, coverage is going to break. It's just the way it's going to work. But I want to call back to the mechanics aspect of Justin Fields' game, because QB School also did a great breakdown on that. And it talked about really his ability. It's funny too, because there was a contrast. Like, I know Kurt Warner's kind of talking on, hey, what's the next step you can take, right? Because like obviously Justin Fields was making plays all over the field, and like, how do you get to that next level? But QB School talked about like him cleaning up his mechanics, his feet always be pointing towards this target, and things of that nature. So he does a really good job of it. You could tell he's picking things up, and I think he's like, sky's the limit for him. Yeah, man, like the connection he has with Cole Kmet, you can tell. I would not be surprised. Kmet is going to be your second target in the offense. I wouldn't be surprised if he's even the most targeted. And I don't see why he can't have 850 yards and 8 to 10 touchdowns. Like that doesn't seem like an unrealistic number for me. People forget how bad Matt Nagy's offense was and Justin Fields operating it. That offense still was getting like 325 yards a game, which is pitiful. But like, that's the targets have to go somewhere. Like, completions will happen. I don't care what you think about the Bears. Like, Kmet will have a productive season if he stays healthy. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I think to that point, and really, I guess this just kind of encapsulates that the entire offense really took off on Saturday. But what I really like about Getsy so far is, and like I pointed this out when me and you were at camp, like there were some obvious like reflections of the Packers offense that we saw, you know what I mean, with some of the formations they were trying out, some of the concepts they were trying. But like, it seems like he's not beholden to that, because he understands that we don't necessarily have the same playmakers that the Green Bay Packers have had the past couple of years. You know what I mean? We don't necessarily have the exact same like roster buildup. You know, we don't have the offensive line to be able to be afforded for Justin to kind of hang around in the pocket and mess around a little bit. So Getsy's already adjusting to that. And that's already night and day compared to what Matt Nagy used to do, because like, and I don't want to just pile on Matt Nagy because it's just so easy to do these days. And fucking A, brother, we've done plenty of it. Because, you know, easy target, and fuck that guy anyway. But that was always the biggest issue I had with him. He never adjusted to the talent on his team. He always just wanted to make sure like these guys ran his offense no matter what their talent or skill set was. It was like, we need to make my offense work, not okay, this is the guys we have. we're going to adjust my offense to make it work. You know what I mean? And that's what we're already seeing with Getsy. And I feel like that's something that hopefully just continues moving forward, something that kind of develops and guys get more comfortable within the system, that Getsy can really run what he wants. But I like that he's kind of scaled it back. He's really simplified what we're doing. And who knows? Because like it could be a vanilla offense in the preseason for all we know, because you know that's, you don't want to give up too much of your hand. But it seems like we're really sticking to having a tight end out there at all times, even having a guy on the line, having a fullback on the field quite a bit, who has already shown a lot of improvement in the running game and the running blocking inside with that. And he's a guy who can also pass block. And we're really just kind of getting back to basics, you know, if that's the easiest way I can put it. And I'm hoping as we move along, we can advance a little bit, but we're not trying to reinvent the wheel at the same time. If it's working, stick with it. If we start falling off a beaten path and we maybe need to try something a little bit more complicated, that's when you go to that. But I think Getsy early on, and you know, whatever, this age is bad, but I think he's doing a really good job of that.
Well, it's just extremely encouraging. Like something as little as
what's going on, Spag, by the way.
Yeah, what's up, brother? Something as little as 4 receivers running past the first down marker on a 3rd and 13. You know what I mean? Like there's little things about the game already where like I described that Nagy effect in my fucking thing. Like it's a term I made up. Pretty much just feels like you're slowly being choked and like watching your life fucking removed from you because you're in the game the whole time, but you know they're not going to win because they can't score fucking points. And that's probably why half the people were throwing punches on the team. Big rant I've gone on previous episodes and on Twitter if you look at my my pinned tweet. But I think just like seeing things like that happen, or getting a holding call on first down and being 1st and 20 and then seeing, hey, we just cracked off 12 yards, so now we're 2nd and 8. Like you never saw that shit with Matt Nagy. You knew if it was 1st and 20 after a holding call, they were going to run inside zone with David Montgomery. It would get stuffed. He would get fucking hit at the line of scrimmage and then fall forward for 2 yards, and then it would be 2nd and 18. It's like you might as well send the fucking punt unit on first down. So there are things there just of competence. Excuse me. But there are elements of competence there that's just like, I don't know how good Getsy is, but I do know it's a vast improvement already just from 2 little things, man. You know what I mean? Like two little basic fucking ideas. And you talked about how he adjusts to the talent on the field. So why don't we get into that 53-man roster? Huh, Dookie boy?
Yeah, no. Honestly, for the most part, personally, just taking first glance at the 53-man, even the unofficial one we got yesterday compared to the one we got today, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Not a whole lot of surprises, honestly. These are a lot of people that we kind of expected to put in. Spag, we actually just talked about this right before you popped in, I believe. So if you want to re-listen to the pod, we actually did go into that quite a bit. But you know, for the most part, dude, these are all guys we expected to make it. Treston Ebner, of course, made it as like the 3rd running back.
Which I think is kind of an indication he might be the 2nd.
Yeah, I didn't want to call him the 3rd because I knew you'd jump down my throat for that.
Well, I know you're a big Khalil Langford fan, or Jeremy Herbert.
Listen here, Lucas. I'm sick of the Jeremy Langford slander. I have his rookie card and it's fucking signed. And I got it at a bar for buying some dude a shot. That is like one of my favorite bear stories ever.
I'm sure it would be worth just as much if you took a shit on that card. I'm sorry, Jeremy Langford. I don't mean to be like that. You're a top 1% athlete for real. But yes, that card is not the most valuable. I do have a signed Justin Fields rookie card.
It means everything in the world to me. That's like I woke up as a 20-year-old, blacked out at a party, and I woke up with a Pokemon card in my pocket. So like I cherish shit like that.
You're the shitbag that. So when I was a kid, sorry to get off track, but when I was a kid, my brother had a party, and I remember I had 2 Pokemon like binders. One was like filled with energy cards and bullshit, you know, like the Onyx and shit that you get like in every single pack. And then the other one was a way smaller one that was just filled with holographics. And I had the original holographic Bulbasaur. That entire book was gone. I'm sure he went and sold that shit for like $20 to go get beer in 2006 or 2005, whatever it was. And like that Bulbasaur right now, I've never actually looked up the thing. Cause dude, those packs alone go for like $1,000 for fucking a pack or like a blaster box of the original Pokemon cards. Cause I got into the sports cards a little bit, you know, during the pandemic. There was just nothing to do.
Oh, dude, and I have a ton of sports cards from when I was growing up. My Pokemon cards, I used to keep them in a lunchbox. Those are fucking gone, dude. I had so many good ones. I got into Yu-Gi-Oh cards for a minute too, but let's not diverge too far
Yeah,
on.
not too much. Not too much. My bad.
My brother lost all his original PS1 games by borrowing them to a buddy, and he hasn't seen them for like 20 years. So, like, I get it. I definitely get it. But kind of going back to the 53-man roster, yeah, like I said, I feel like the only like big surprise would be like a Jake Tongs, just because I don't think really anybody expected him to come in as an undrafted free agent. You know, a guy that can play fullback and tight end. Obviously, they're listing him as a fullback, but I feel like he fills a little bit more of that H-back role. Anybody who
But
maybe
didn't he just get waived? I feel like, should we talk about the strategy?
I don't think he got waived. I think he is still on the team.
Okay.
At least he's still on the official roster on the Bears, and they have updated it since all the waiver claims. But to kind of finish my point, like I feel like if he does end up getting on the field, I feel like think like how Chris Cooley was used early on with Washington back in the day, kind of in that H-back role where he can line up as a fullback, but he's going to be moving out of the backfield and potentially lined up maybe behind a guy like Cole Kmet on the line and going off on a little route to the sidelines, you know. But there's a lot of money to be made there, especially if you can make guys miss or just run through them. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, the offensive line moves, I feel like we're pretty expected.
Should we just take this from a macro perspective? Because I feel like a lot has happened, and like we saw a lot of guys get picked up, or like there were some surprises, like a Tongs, like a the defensive lineman Pennell. You know what I mean? Like Coley got waived. So like I think we should kind of take it from a macro perspective real quick, because I just feel like there was some strategy there. Like we saw Duke Shelley make the roster, right? Let me give you an example. We saw Duke Shelley make the roster and Thomas Graham get cut. And I know Thomas Graham had some injuries, but like Duke Shelley hasn't performed that well. And then Thomas Graham was put onto the practice squad, right? And then like when they make some of these waiver pickups, Duke Shelley got cut. So my theory is Ryan Poles had some guys that he wanted to try to get onto the practice squad first. So he wanted to see like, hey, if Thomas Graham's our first choice, if no one claims Thomas Graham, then we can just cut Duke Shelley. But if someone claims him, then we can go ahead and move Duke Shelley to the practice squad. That's like kind of my thought on this. And do you have like, I guess the original or who's been cut since they made the 53-man roster? Do you have that in front of you?
Yeah, it's Kyrus Tonga, Caleb Johnson, and Duke Shelley and Zachary Thomas. Those are the four guys. But to kind of pick up off that, I could also see the way that was maneuvered. Because you know, obviously Bears fans were a little worried seeing that Thomas Graham got cut, but because of his injury, I felt like he was going to clear fairly easy, and so it made sense that he was going to immediately go back into the practice squad. But like I feel like he picked guys that if he didn't get the waiver claim that he wanted, they would be able to do something like on special teams. Like it wouldn't be like the worst thing in the world. Cause at least if you have a Duke Shelley around, he's still a special teamer. And if you need Thomas Graham to ever come up, you can always cut him and bring Thomas Graham up. You know what I mean? It's one of those situations. And Caleb Johnson, obviously another special teams guy, Kyrus Tonga, who honestly is the big surprise one, man. That's one of our boys that we really hyping
we should
up.
Definitely touch on that.
Because what made it surprising for me, Lucas, was just the fact that he had gotten so many first team reps. Like he was somebody who was really impressing in camp. He's somebody who, like Larry Meyer,
they've been singing high praises about him. Yeah, dude. Like they've been singing high praises about him, and like you said, he was rolling with the ones throughout
up in great
all
shape,
of camp. Yeah, like throughout all of camp. Really, in mini camp, he got moved up with the ones. And I know Watts plays into that, right? What's his name? Armon Watts, who got picked up from the Vikings. I guess we should go ahead. Like, who did we claim off waivers? Because we made 6 claims, which is strange. Like, having 6 claims is not normal. And I understand it for year one. But why don't we – you got that in front of you too, right?
Yeah. I guess before I go into, like, the official names, like – and I was talking to you about this before the show, Lucas. My personal feel of it is like Ryan Poles is being aggressive 100%, making these waiver claims, seeing guys that he was kind of keeping an eye on throughout the last cuts anyway. And these were a lot of guys that he was just gonna make a claim on. And it's like, if I get them, great. If I don't, okay. You know what I mean? I feel like Alex Leatherwood and Armin Watts are like the two big ones out of this group where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna put a claim in on these guys because it kind of feels obvious that I should. But like, if I don't get them, I still have a Kyrus Tongue on here. I still feel pretty decent about a Zachary Thomas or like another offensive lineman off the practice squad. But because he got those, he also got the other guys he was looking at. You know what I mean? It's kind of a situation for anybody who doesn't understand the waiver process, because I could kind of be working myself into a shoot here if you don't understand it. So basically, after the last round of cuts, you have like 24 hours to put in a claim. You don't know if other teams are putting in claims. You don't know if you're going to get, if you don't still have the highest priority going into the next day. It's kind of one of those situations where once that claim window closes, you get the guy if you claimed him. You know what I mean? It's not one of those things where it's like Ryan Poles can be like, oh, well, because I got Alex Leatherwood, I don't want Teven Jenkins. It's like, no, bro, you claimed both of them. You're getting them. You know what I mean? You got to put them on your 53.
I think, yes, I think that is part of it. And I just want to also like make sure it's clear. So the Bears had 7th priority. So like if the Bears put in 6 claims, but one of the 6 in front of them did it, like it's not like fantasy football where like you use your claim and then you get bumped to the end, right? Like if fucking Jacksonville, who has the number 1 priority, puts in 12 claims, they will get all 12 of those claims, right? But those people have to be activated to your 53-man roster. And I don't have clarity, and I've been trying to figure it out, but I don't have clarity on how long they have to be on your 53-man roster before you can try to put them back on a practice squad, because they could be guys. That's what I'm saying. I think there's a bit of manipulation happening here where it's like, okay, Zach Thomas had no business making the roster. He didn't do well in preseason, but he does. Like I really liked him coming out of the draft, but like from what I saw with him, he's an unfinished product. I don't think he was going to have any issue getting to the practice squad. So I think that's where like some of these guys come. I do think Tonjes is going to be dropped or try to get onto the practice squad at some point, because they were able to do Harry on IR, I believe, and then. That's another thing too. Tajay Sharp, he got put on IR because he's going to miss the year. Like, I think that gives them rights to Tajay Sharp next year unless they do an injury settlement. But you know what I mean?
It does. From what I understand the situation, it does.
Yeah, and there's like a lot to this whole waiver process, and like being a new team, I think it's okay to use the waivers a ton, because they might have gotten guys that if they had more draft picks, they would have picked up or whatever it may be, right? So there's just a lot of elements to it, and I feel like it's hard to dissect, but let's jump into like some of these higher end waiver, because I think a lot of people are excited about Alex Leatherwood. Like, so we should just talk about him, right?
Yeah. Just real quick. Well, actually, all right. So
no,
Spag,
go back. I'm sorry, go back.
No, you're good. You're good. It's Spags brought up the linebacker from the Colts. That was one of my boys in the pre-draft process. But I can get to that later. Alex Leatherwood's a good place to start because he's like one of the 2 big ones. So Alex Leatherwood, obviously, pretty big name. You know what I mean? Even if you want to look at it in the fact that he got overdrafted, even if you want to look at the fact that like he wasn't even the best tackle on the board when he got drafted, he maybe wasn't one of the best 3 tackles on the board when he got drafted. We didn't draft him in the first round. You know what I mean? So like that you have to throw that out the window. You know what I mean? He's definitely been disappointing as a first round pick. And man, it doesn't take much. It doesn't matter if you really know football or not. It doesn't take much to watch his film from A, this preseason, and B, last season at guard and both tackle, to see that he was obviously the kind of the what's the word I'm looking for here? The ugly duckling of the offensive line, which is pretty interesting considering most offensive linemen are pretty damn ugly. But it's a situation where we claimed him, I feel like, because we thought that he would get claimed, or that because if we wanted him, that was the only shot we were going to be able to really have at him. So that's why we ended up picking him up, and that's why we have that $6 million guaranteed connected to him, which really brings up an intriguing situation when you look at the Bears offensive line and kind of how pay structure is across the line with where we're paying offensive linemen right now. And you can look at it as maybe the Bears, okay, whatever, this is money they weren't going to spend anyway. Alex Leatherwood's getting paid like a starter on the offensive line because of this first round contract. And you may have seen, me, for example, or other people complaining about the Bears picking up this contract. And it's like, oh, well, 5.9 or 6 million isn't that much. And that's not the issue of it. It's based on where we are with our current offensive line, with what he's getting paid. He's a guy that's it's going to be hard to justify that he's not on the field. And me personally, I'm somebody who doesn't believe he belongs on the field yet. I feel like a red shirt season would go a long way for him with a coaching staff that maybe fully embraces what he brings to the table. But the thing that scares me the most, and we don't have to dive too much into it if you don't want to, Lucas, but it scares me that this could potentially be the out for a guy like Ryan Poles trading a Teven Jenkins, of these rumors that have just not gone away.
Yeah. I think that is still on the table, very much so. I do believe that, and I think it's almost a leverage move for Ryan Poles to pick up Leatherwood, because you think like Tampa's lost fucking 12 interior linemen this year. You know what I mean? You'd think someone like Tampa would take a flyer on him or whatever. But before we get into the Teven Jenkins trade stuff, I kind of want to hit a couple of things you said, right? Yes, he's a first round pick, number 17 from Alabama, but you got to understand who was drafting there, right? Like, just looking at the NFL prospect list from his draft year, I believe it was 2021, last year. Yeah, it was last year. He's rated a 6.28, which is considered will eventually be an average starter. Obviously, it's not the end all be all. The guy who drafted him and Mike Mayock used to fucking be a big part of the ratings, right? It's Lance Zierlein and the NFL team's grading system and how they rank them. But like across the board, you were seeing Alex Leatherwood projected in the who's the kid from Notre Dame? Liam
Eichenberg.
Yeah, you were seeing him kind of projected in that range, who went in the second round, like 38, right? So usually there's tackles get drafted higher than their ranking just because of their positional value. But like, we're talking a huge jump. He's ranked in the 40s, the 50s, and he got picked in the first round. So like, I don't think the Bears got a true first round talent with Alex Leatherwood, but I think you're dead on with the indication of starting, right? Like, now Eberflus has preached competition, you're going to earn your fucking spot. Like, I don't think he's going to be the week one starter, but I do think, like, you look at the Lucas Patrick contract, they gave him 2 years, $8 million. And how much of it was guaranteed? Total guaranteed was $4 million. So they have more invested in what's it called with the guaranteed 5.9 million with Alex or with Leatherwood than they do with Lucas Patrick. And Lucas Patrick was supposed to be a staple piece in rebuilding this offensive line. So like, the implication is with how they spend money. You look, they signed 20 people this year. Not everyone's still on the team, the Michael Schofields and stuff like that. They signed 20 people this year. He is getting a higher contract than 12 of the people that they signed, right? So like, he's in the top half of the money spent in a year that has turned into a complete fucking rebuild. Let's be real here. There's no more retool. We've seen a lot of key pieces go in terms of Hicks, Mack, fucking Goldman, like the list goes on, right? James Daniels is no longer here, and you didn't really replace those contracts. It has nothing to do with the actual amount they're spending on Alex Leatherwood. And I wasn't high on him coming out of the draft, so it's not like a move that I'm super excited about, but I'm just trying to put perspective to it. Because, hey, man, if he's a better fit in our system than he is with the Raiders and what they're trying to do right now, and Josh McDaniels kind of has a power background, right? And he's more of a zone blocker, and Alex Leatherwood, or is his name Alex Leatherwood? Do I keep fucking that up?
It is.
Okay,
Alex
I don't know.
Leatherwood.
It's because I keep looking up and seeing Armand, and I'm like, why? Okay. But yeah, that's Armand Watts. But no, I think there's a bit of concern there, and I guess we can entertain, like, yeah, I do think it makes the door wide open, right? Because Patrick looks like he's on point to start practicing next week, and will probably be ready for week one. They even talked to Matt Eberflus even before, talked about how they would be open to bumping Patrick to guard. So if they were to me, that's a clear indication. If they were to trade fucking Jenkins, Patrick could play guard and Mustipher could play center. And that's kind of how they feel about him, right? So now that Alex Leatherwood's in the fold, I just feel like it complicates things, because you got a lot of guys that are projected to play on the interior. Who knows? Maybe they see him as a tackle, and maybe he eventually takes over for Larry Borum. I have no idea, right? But just like, the room got kind of crowded pretty quick. And it's not like there's a ton of top end talent crowding the room. It's all guys kind of in the same level, a lot of question marks, a lot of guys that hopefully grow into their potential. It's a young group. Like, I have faith, I guess, but it's just it does to me open that door wide open, because now you have more leverage. People were offering you 7th round picks for a fucking guy that you guys took in high in the 2nd round that they traded up for, and I know it's not Poles who did it, but gave up next year's capital to trade up and get this guy. I just feel like yeah, it swings that door wide open.
Well, and I think, I guess like my total takeaway, if we're even just ignoring the Teven situation, but like if this was a move where Poles can ignore the cap hit or can ignore the guaranteed money and just straight up have Leatherwood like basically be a red shirt this season, basically just be able to take it in and just kind of start from scratch, kind of treat him as a rookie and be like, hey, I know you probably learned a lot of wild shit in with the Raiders. You had a head coaching change mid-season. There was probably a lot of influx going on there, and you probably got lost in the shuffle because they were trying to make a weird run at the playoffs, honestly, if we're looking at the Raiders last year. So like let's start from scratch, like in a weird way, like try to reset your mind of everything you learned there. We really like what you are athletically. We really like what you are. You started for Nick Saban in college, so obviously you can do some things right. We like what you are. Raw, you're a very raw prospect, but like we need to start from scratch with you. Like, don't expect to start this year. Don't expect to get real. Don't expect to be like the swing tackle or anything like that. We really just want to get you in an NFL practice. We want to get you accumulated with this culture, and you can be a potential guy for us moving forward. Because like, if we try to rush him in, I feel like we're going to run into a lot of issues because it just feels like he's just not, it feels like he's just been taught all the wrong things, man. Like, it's not hard to look at his film and just see that his footwork is horrendous.
There's a low light
his center of balance is terrible. Like, me just looking at it from an offensive lineman standpoint, like, he is a guy that just, I would hate to have next to me because like, he's not doing a lot right. And he seems like a guy you'd have to hold his hand with a lot of things. But like when you have the raw potential that he does, even being a potential 2nd round pick where he probably should have been drafted and moved to guard immediately, not even messed around at right tackle, like there's still something there. You know what I mean? He's still somebody that was expected to get claimed, even with all of this negative stuff around him. So like, that's how I'd like to see him get used. Obviously, dude, I'm very much in the not trading Teven Jenkins camp. And I know a lot of Bears fans are now, especially with how he's played in the preseason. I will still I'll still stand on the hill that he was the best offensive lineman the past two games. We didn't get really a great taste of him in the first game, but there's potentially could have been the best in the first game had he had a little bit more practice beforehand. Like, so he looks like a legit fucking player. But I don't want to just close my ears off and act like Ian Rappaport's just telling me nonsense. Like, Teven's addressed these. Like, if you watch the press conferences, if you watch interviews with Teven, when he gets asked about it, he doesn't get defensive. He doesn't try to change the subject. He doesn't say like, I'm a Chicago Bear and I'm happy where I'm at. You know what I mean? It's
he deliberately said, I'm happy to play for the Chicago Bears right now.
Yeah,
that literally means right now to me. It doesn't mean this season.
It's basically been a lot of like, and he even brought up like getting film on himself, you know what
exactly.
I mean? Nothing but a positive. And like, he's kind of he's been really nonchalant where it's like, I'm here right now, you know what I mean? And I'm happy to be here if I'm here. But like, you never know what the future holds. Like, even him being asked if like he feels comfortable at a spot on a 53-man roster, which honestly was a pretty wild question by whoever asked it. Considering what Teven's done the past 2 weeks, he was obviously trying to bait him a little bit for an answer, but he got it. So fair enough. But Teven kind of just gave the whole, like, that's not my decision to make. Like, it's definitely the front office and the coaching staff at this point. So like, it seems like if you want to keep ignoring the fact that there's trade rumors there, go ahead. But like, you have to be prepared that this is a pretty real thing because Teven has basically done everything but said like, yes, I'm being very actively shopped in trade rumors. And I feel like whoever's going to be asking questions to Ryan Poles tomorrow, please don't softball him. Please really kind of drive the point home with this because like, we need clarity to this situation moving forward. I think everybody does.
Yeah. And I just feel, I feel like we found a solution to a problem that was glaring in the first preseason game. And like the idea of replacing that solution with another question mark to then get like a 6th-round pick, I fucking hate that idea. And I do think that there was a little bit more leverage added with picking up Leatherwood, because now they could be like, hey, yeah, we don't need to trade him if we, you know what I mean? Maybe they were getting lowballed too much. I don't know if he was I think he was actively being shopped at a point, and I do think the Rappaport report could have been people asking about trading for him, like other teams trying to call in, and maybe the Bears like what they see. I feel like there's a lot of hypotheticals here, but I don't know, man. I also think Leatherwood and Watts in general were like surprise guys that they didn't think they would get, right? Like, I think that's part of why they have 6 waiver claims as well, because they're like, okay, these are the 4 guys that we like that we're willing to replace. But here's 2 more, because we know we have 2 guys going on IR, right? Like, here's 2 more guys that like we're going to take a shot on, because it didn't. I'm surprised, like for Leather, and that's another thing too. I thought it was going to be 5.9 a year, so like everyone was super happy when they were like, oh, it's only $6 million total, opposed to the 5, because realistically, I thought if you claim someone off waivers, you would have to take on the rest of their rookie contract. I know for a fact a 17 overall pick is not in the $2 million a year range. So I would assume that the Raiders had to eat more of that guaranteed money up front. And that's what lowered that cap hit for the Bears. So I'm, like I said, we both said we're both comfortable with the number. I encourage the Bears to spend more because they are in a full blown rebuild. Like I said, I mean, 19 pace players are left. I said in a tweet that 50% of this roster would be turned over, don't get attached. And I think by next year, 80%, they're already in that 65 to 70% range of the fucking team being turned over. Like, it's completely been turned up on its head entirely. So that's why I'm like, why would anyone think they have any affinity towards Teven Jenkins? They've gotten rid of so many people. It's a brand new fucking team with some really good positive core spots, but like Roquan isn't guaranteed to be here anymore. Eddie Jackson, Cody Whitehair are both going to be looked at as cap casualties next year. Whoever whatever blogger writes that list of potential outs, like they're both in there. So we could be looking at a team with Kmet, Mooney, and fucking Fields, and like that's it. You know what I mean? Like, there's no. I truly think we could see that much fucking turnover with this roster by next year. So I don't know, man. It's just like I said, I guess overarching strategy. I understand making that many waiver claims, but like if you're in year 2 after a full offseason with a ton of money and a full fucking draft that you have, and you're probably gonna get some extra picks and trade down if I'm assuming you're the same, like every draft pick and every waiver claim, like that's fine in year 1. But if you're there in year 2, there's something seriously wrong, right? Like you shouldn't be activating 6 players to your practice squad. It makes sense when it's like one of the Ravens DBs that they really like and they got in the 4th round, but they have such a stacked fucking DB room that they're going to try to get them out of the practice squad. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's different when it's that versus like Trayvon fucking Wesco. You know what I mean? Like, you get what I'm saying? And like, hey, I'm sure he's going to be fucking great. Trayvon's great. He's got like 6 career fucking catches. So he's clearly a blocking tight end, but you get what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like, I feel like we've really beaten the Alex Leatherwood horse at this point, and I feel like we're going to get a little bit more clarity once Poles and Ian Cunningham talk to the media Thursday tomorrow, for anybody who's listening to the podcast version, which, by the way, listen to the podcast version and rate 5 stars. We really appreciate that. Shameless plug. But yeah, kind of taking a look at like some of these other guys we got though, and I really like that you touched on, because we were talking about it before we started the show, and I think I alluded to it a little bit before we even got into the topic, was like Leatherwood and Watts kind of felt like, okay, if we get these guys, great. If we don't, we have the 4 guys we want to get. But like we got them, you know what I mean? So it's a situation where you have to maneuver the roster because you got them. And I feel like we need to talk about Armon Watts or Armon Watts, however he pronounced his first name. We will figure it out. Especially, dude, if you're playing first team on Sundays, like we'll definitely figure it out. But this is a guy who really impressed last season with Minnesota. I believe he's a former 6th round pick. Let me pull him up real quick just so I get his stats correct as well.
Yeah, he's in his 4th year.
he's a guy who only started 9 games last season, was probably a bit of a rotational piece, but like 5 sacks, 46 combined tackles with 20 even being solo. That's impressive up front in a 4-3 defense. That's exactly what you want from your defensive tackle. The old adage I'll always go to is Brian Urlacher raving about a guy like Anthony Adams because he just makes the linebackers' jobs easier, especially when you're able to eat tackles or just be able to get on the ground, start a pile, and just grab ankles. You know what I mean? But he's obviously a guy who's a little bit more finesse than that as well because, he's not necessarily the biggest guy in the world, 6'5", 307. The Bears have him listed at 295, but we'll see what the scale actually says because you know how they like cutting off a couple pounds. But
yeah, for sure,
he's a guy at 26 years old. It's essentially a 1-year deal for him. 1 year, like 2.5 million is essentially how we look at this because we don't have anything option wise or anything moving forward because he was a 6th round pick. But like a great shot for him to really prove that he's a 4-3 defensive tackle that we can kind of sink our teeth into. I feel like he's going to get a lot of opportunities. I feel like he's not going to necessarily start week 1. I feel like he's going to have to ingratiate himself with the culture, especially with what we talk about with Matt Eberflus kind of wanting his guys to earn their spot. But I really like the signing. I think this should be the signing we focus on a little bit more than Leatherwood because I feel like he has a bigger shot to make an immediate impact. And I think I love Kairos Tonga. It hurts. I'm gonna follow him wherever he goes. I'm kind of assuming he's gonna go to Atlanta just because that's how Ryan Pace operates. But Armon Watts is a pretty I would even say an upgrade at the position. Like just what he brings to the table and what he's proven on NFL film.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think there's a bit of strategy in Tonga as well because they're trying to get him onto the practice squad. So like you think like maybe you let a couple of the guys like look at the position, right? There was only 4 defensive linemen that were made the initial 53-man roster, one being Pennell, who a lot of people were kind of like a Zachary Thomas, like why did he make this roster? But you could tell they tried to get Coley to the practice squad. Right. And they are trying to get Tonga to the practice squad as well. But then you look at something like the DBs where they had a ton of fucking DBs. I think they had 9 or 10 total that made the initial 53. It's like, okay, we're going to try to get Graham there first. If not, our backup plan is Shelley or one of these guys off waivers. Right. So I just feel like there is some strategy there. I'll give Ryan Poles some credit. But still, everything is, we're talking about the bottom 53 of the roster, like they might even just be trying to stash these guys on practice squads as well. Like, hey, we actually really like Thomas Graham. We're going to elevate him and drop one of these guys down to the practice squad and house him on ours because now you need to take him and put him on your 53. So I don't know how long they have to be on 53. You know what I mean? Are they going to be active on game day? Like a couple of these guys were UDFAs, which makes me question, like, I like Trenton Gill, but why did you draft Trenton Gill over one of them? Like you had the opportunity to pick them up.
So, and I'm not trying to interrupt your point, but actually, as you were talking, it kind of clicked in my head. What Poles could be doing here is he could be doing this to get these, to maneuver obviously with the practice squad and the 53-man roster, but he could be doing this in an attempt to try to keep all of these guys while other teams fill up their practice squads. Like other teams, once it hits Monday next week, guys are not going to really mess around with roster cuts and practice squad. They're going to want to get that stuff set in stone. And I could see him maneuvering this the way it is right now, trying to get all these guys back, putting certain bodies on the practice squad because he knows once the season starts, the practice squad doesn't get hit as nearly as much. The practice squad, I feel like, if there was a statistic out there, I feel like it's like a week 7, week 8 on is when they start getting kind of hit. So you have the chance to like take a shot on these guys that you want to see on the 53-man roster while having a couple weeks to still have some of the guys that you feel like could be contributors later on in the season. So honestly, if that's what Poles is thinking, this is a genius strategy, and I have to give him a lot of freaking credit for it. I feel like me and you specifically got a lot of flack for our opinions of Poles, especially with the whole Roquan Smith situation and our feelings on it. But like, I have to say, I really like this type of aggressiveness because if this is something that say Ryan Pace was doing year 1, I'd be all over it. And I'm pretty all over it with the way it is right now. And I feel like, even outside of Armon Watts, like Sterling Weatherford from the Colts. That's a name that kind of flew under the radar as well. No, like nobody's really talking about that one. That's a guy personally I was really high on in the draft. You know, humble brag. I have to talk about how I wanted him in the draft, of course. But like he is somebody who really showed out in the preseason for the Colts. And I wouldn't be surprised if Matt Eberflus like picked up a phone and called an old connection. You know, I don't want to talk about NFL tampering or anything like that, but like I wouldn't be surprised if he called one of his old buddies in Indianapolis. He's like, hey man, what's the deal on the Sterling Weatherford guy? Is he going to make your roster? And them being like, hey, probably not. But like,
I don't know if they really liked him though and wanted to stash him. I maybe there wasn't any insider trading, but I kind of want to get back to that point because it does seem like he wants to have all of these guys so he has options, right? Like, and so he has more time to evaluate them at practice to see exactly what they can do. I also think you're going to see a couple of these guys, like the next two that get dropped, they're going to go to the practice squad and they're going to cut the other like two guys from this practice squad that's currently held, or whatever it may be, right? Like I do think that practice squad's going to turn over a little bit more.
I feel like anybody who's been on the 53-man roster in the last 48 hours is going to have priority of whoever's on the practice squad right now.
Exactly. And like, if you really want to think about in-season pickups, like it is a lot different than after that first round of cuts. There's a lot more movement in season. I think Ryan Pace had one before, but then Alex Bars was the only other guy that someone was trying to pick up from the practice squad. And when another team does that, you have the option to settle with them, renegotiate their contract, and make them a part of your 53-man roster. Right. Like, so you do have first right. So having all those guys on the practice squad and then, you know what I mean? Like, and then having the other guys on the roster right now, like maybe you don't like them as much. So maybe you just elevate them at some point and cut that other guy. You know what I mean? So I feel like it just gives him more options in house. And I think he really is manipulating. He did say it, like, we're going to work the fuck out of the UDFA market, our draft picks, like all that stuff. Like he is being, honest about that aspect. Like that is coming true. Everything he kind of described about his strategy. And you could tell he's really working that lower part of the barrel. So what was Weatherford, right? Like what was he drafted? Because he was drafted this year, wasn't he?
I believe Weatherford was actually an undrafted free agent. He was a guy that kind of he was somebody that definitely fell under the radar. I feel like a lot of it's because he played at Miami, Ohio, and that's not necessarily like a football powerhouse unless you're looking at Ben Roethlisberger, you know what I mean? But
so
he is
Ohio though, for real.
He's somebody that's like he's just raw, very freaking raw. He played safety in college. They're making the move for him in the NFL at linebacker. And like, dude, his size, his speed, he's one of those guys. It's just like he's incredible to look at in the most non-weird way.
He just looks the part. Yeah.
Like he's like, think like, and I don't want to start him off on a bad foot, but think like Taylor Mays. You know what I mean? You look at Taylor Mays and like, this dude was building a freaking laboratory. You know what I mean? Sterling Weatherford, maybe not as jacked, but like you just look at this guy. He's this tall, lengthy guy who's insanely athletic, pretty big build as well. His arms aren't as big as you're probably going to want him to be, Lucas, but he's somebody that can definitely,
he's no Rondale Moore.
He fits the mold of like a modern day interior linebacker, you know what I mean, who can play coverage, or even like a Will, like how he would play. He would probably be a guy who would line up behind Roquan, you know what I mean? Or if you ever wanted to get into like a big safety set, kind of how we used to talk about what we always liked Deion Bush to potentially do. That would be like the Weatherford role, to be like that third safety coming off if you want him to be able to be intermediate on a tight end or something like that. I'm not saying that's how he's going to be used, you know, because I feel like Elijah Hicks is going to get the nod over that, and Crowshank obviously, but God, I freaking hate you, Dylan. But I see him as a guy who definitely has a lot of potential. Sky high.
That's what I don't know if he heard, but Miami of Ohio is the best university in Ohio, like by a wide margin.
He tried baiting me so hard into bringing up that he was from Ohio earlier, and I just completely shot him down with it. But anyway, if I'm being honest, I don't know a ton about Kingsland Jonathan. Like he had
I'd rather be honest than bullshit and be like, yeah, I know about this guy that fucking went to Syracuse or this, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that was an undrafted free agent.
His numbers look good at Syracuse, but obviously I have to look at him. Josh Blackwell as well. Obviously he was somebody that polls really wanted if he was willing and that's the thing. If we're actually, because this is something we didn't bring up, and I think it's important to bring up. Poles got a corner. He cut a corner. Got a defensive end. Got rid of, I believe it was Caleb Johnson. Got Armin Watts, defensive tackle. Got rid of a defensive tackle. You know what I mean? So, like, these all seemed like moves of guys that, like, hey, if I get this guy, this is somebody I want immediately on the roster to at least take a shot. And obviously, like we were talking about, possibly manipulating the practice squad as well. But, like, these are guys that obviously Poles is really high on. And I the one thing I guess we haven't touched on is, like, I wonder how much influence Matt Eberflus really has, like, when it comes to moves like this. You know what I mean? Because we really haven't seen the working relationship too long with Ryan Poles and him, and we're going to see it continuing to move forward. And I feel like we're going to get a better idea of it, especially if, say, like, Roquan plays out of his freaking gourd at will linebacker and looks like one of the best will linebackers in football, and Ryan Poles continues to kind of play hardball with him. How does Matt Eberflus start fielding those questions? Because we all know they're going to start coming on in the post game show. You know what I mean? So, like.
That all remains to be seen.
That's going to be interesting to see is how the working relationship is. You know what I mean? Because, you know, I feel like we saw it with Pace and Fox. It was a little bit of an interesting one, to say the least. And then you had Nagy and Pace, where it felt like some things they were really on the same page, and other things it was like, wow, they seem like they're completely on different stratospheres because Nagy just flat out won't play some of these guys that Pace is obviously high on. So it's going to be interesting to see moving forward. And, like, that's not a detriment on either Poles or Eberflus. It's just something that we need to pay attention to. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like we've done a great job really highlighting what Poles has done well throughout this process. And I want people to be able to talk about both the positive and the negative side of things, just so we can continue to be honest with ourselves.
Just civil, normal discussion, you know.
Don't go on Twitter pounding your freaking chest to Packer fans about how we're going to win 12 fucking games this year, and then be surprised when no Bear fans are coming to defend your ass when they come just hanging dong on the top of your head. You know what I mean? Because you made a dumbass take, which actually, Lucas, unless you have anything else you want to cover on this, I feel like we should move into kind of our final point of the episode. And it's something that we talked about. We didn't talk about before the show, but we talked about last week.
Yeah, I got one last thing specifically, because, like, I don't think I accounted for when I said that 50% of this roster is going to be turned over this year. That's only because of the change of regime. You forget both schemes changed on either side of the ball. Like, you got to think about how many different skill sets you need. Like, not even just preferences of Ryan Poles, but, like, you need different offensive linemen for a West Coast spread type of fucking, you know, 4 wide, full field read versus a stretch zone concept, or is, like, you like to call it the power zone, or whatever the fuck you call it, power stretch, which is a term that I heard fucking recently. I feel like it's made up.
I don't remember saying,
or the power spread.
Oh, okay. Oh,
power
my gosh.
spread.
That was like the worst argument we've ever gotten into.
I still think it's fucking bullshit, to be honest.
I think your entire idea is stupid as well, but continue.
Yeah, but, like, there you forget about, like, how much has actually changed. So yeah, the roster turnover is expected, and like I said, I want to drive home the point. Like, it is not normal for, if you have, what did the Bears have, like 11 draft picks and free agents that made the 53-man roster between UDFA. So you're talking about 11 fucking rookies on your 53, and you're talking like 53-man roster. Everyone's getting time, whether it's special teams or rotating in at certain spots. So, like, that's not normal, and making 6 waiver claims isn't normal. And I'm fine with it for the first year, but moving forward, like, you need to see, because then you're worried about, like, okay, like, a lot of these moves that they made and a lot of these guys they promoted, a lot of these guys that we got rid of were probably better. Now you're going backwards, right? So, like, it is a full ass fucking rebuild. And I feel like that is something that's been misconstrued. You know, it started off where I was like, yeah, Khalil Mack, like, if we still have some of these guys, we have a pretty good core that you could work around. They decided not to. They decided we're going to strip this thing down to fucking nothing and take really only the gems on this roster. It's very clear at this point.
So, and I feel like to kind of encapsulate what you're saying here is, like, it's not a detriment on the players who are no longer on the team. It's just they don't necessarily fit a scheme. And with where this team is right now, where they're not in a situation to go win a Super Bowl this season, which I know, hot take, they're not going to necessarily be patient with trying to make those guys work into a new scheme. You know what I mean? They're not going to try to teach an old dog new tricks per se. Which is why I obviously early on in the year, I was really big on Robert Quinn possibly getting moved because I saw the direction we were going. He is a 4-3 defensive end. So it does make sense that he is sticking around because it seems like the guys they did keep around are either A, young enough and high enough potential to be able to learn, or B, already are pretty comfortable in this system. So we're just going to stick him in it. But yeah, and I guess before we, unless you have anything else on this subject, before we get into previews, I just want to make this one single point, just one really quick. Jack freaking Sanborn, undrafted free agent from Wisconsin, proved everybody freaking wrong, man. Making the 53-man roster. Nobody expects undrafted free agents to make the 53-man roster, especially a linebacker from Wisconsin who wasn't even considered the best linebacker on his team. Everyone was really on board with Leo Chenal, which for good reason. Leo Chenal is also going to be a dog, but I would be remiss to say that I am insanely proud of Jack Sanborn for making the 53-man roster. Not only a local Illinois kid, but a guy who just did everything right at Wisconsin, man. Just did everything you wanted from an inside linebacker. And, I feel like everybody thinks of like running backs and offensive linemen when it comes to Wisconsin. But with Jim Leonard's system he has up here, we have really been cranking out some linebackers. And Jack Sanborn is just latest example. I said when he got signed that I would be I think he's going to make the 53-man roster. And, man, I'm just proud of you, man. I think you did an incredible job. Jack Sanborn, welcome to the 53-man roster. Welcome to the official Week 1 NFL. But now that I got that out of the way,
I'm surprised you didn't start crying, dude. I wish we had background music to play, like someone with a fucking violin.
Hey man, we can clip this and put it on the Twitter
background. Yeah.
Jesus,
how empty are your balls right now?
I'll find some really good music. Hey man, Jack does look at all my stories when I post them on Instagram. So I mean, and he hasn't.
Does he follow you now?
No, I wish. He hasn't blocked me though, which is a good sign.
Are you sending him them directly? Like, are you
No, I'm not doing that. The only thing I did with that was I sent him a DM when he got signed originally. And I'm like, welcome to Chicago Bears, huge Badgers fan. Hope you make the team. Outside of that, dude, it's just been like Instagram stories. But he's been opening them and he's been looking at them. So that's kind of cool. But I'm not trying to sound like a fucking creep. So let's just get off the point.
No,
if I really want to sound creepy, we can start bringing up the Mitch Trubisky DMs. But
it's not creepy because honestly, there's a trend going on right now, and it's like someone laughing as the sound. And fucking, it's literally like when I texted Aaron Donald, like, "Oh, we going back to back, brother. Glad to have you on the team." Like when my girl finds out, or like when my girl sees my DMs, because that's literally like everyone's done it. So like, I don't know. I find it very funny. That trend gets me every single time. Like when I text fucking Justin Fields, "You're the future, brother. Like I believe in you." Blah 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 blah. And your girl finds out, thinking you're gonna, be fucking hitting up other girls from Instagram, like models and stuff. I don't know. I get a kick out of it.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. And I'm not going to lie, dude, I'll never feel any more of a sense of pride than actually getting Jack Sanborn's freaking autograph at training camp.
I did not know that happened.
Yeah, no, that's his autograph. It's probably what I think I might do is I might cut out this section right here and get like a frame picture of him in a Bears jersey Week 1 and then put it like that. So it's like he autographed this piece, but I got the picture with it. Cause like, dude, I got a pretty nice actually autographed picture situation going on over here. But anyway,
you got enough about me too. I didn't even realize that. I saw those and didn't buy them just because I was pissed.
Oh, dude, I love Eddie Jackson. Even if he isn't a Chicago Bear next year, that's my freaking boy. As long as he doesn't go to the Packers. But anyway, we got a little bit of time here. Predictions, just fire them out, man. How you feeling about this team?
Fuck, you're putting me on the spot, huh? Can I give you a range?
I kind of have an idea like win total. We don't have to go too deep in it. Just give us like a win total or ballpark.
Win total. I would say, here's the thing. I think there's going to be a lot of one-score games. So like, I think this team on the low end could maybe only win 5 games. You know what I mean? It's a pretty light schedule, but I would not be surprised if this team won 9 or 10 games, right? Like, I think there's going to be a lot of one-score games. I think the discipline is going to play a huge factor into it. And I think we should highlight really disciplined throughout the preseason, except for that second half of the Browns game. There was shit going on. what was it? The onside recovery and shit like that. Like some really weak plays that got given up and just got sloppy in general. But overall, like I think a well-disciplined team that's able to run basic concepts and execute in the red zone is like with this schedule has an opportunity to win 9 to 10 games for sure. We got to see how it all unfolds, but like if the preseason translates at all, I think they're going to be closer to that 9 or 10 wins than they will be to that 5 wins.
Yeah, I like that. I'm kind of on the same wavelength with that. I guess the shtick I've kind of convinced myself of is we're gonna have games that we're gonna win by one score, kind of similar to how you were thinking about it. We're gonna have games we're gonna win by one score. We're gonna have games that we're gonna lose by one score, and then just being honest, we're gonna have games where we get our dick blown off. It's gonna happen. You know what I mean?
The Buffalo Bills is 100%.
It's not going to be a situation where that's going to be like the turning point where I'm just going to blow up and be like, wow, this season's over. Cause like I'm trying to go into this without expectations, but where I'm at is like, I feel like I'm a little bit higher on the win total. I feel like they cover that 6.5 and they hit at least 7.
Yeah. I have a lot of money on it. So I'm hoping to God they do.
So
and Vegas is with the population is with the under. Like a lot of people are hammering that Bears under.
So from what I'm seeing just with coaching and with what I've seen from Justin Fields early on, and I trust the defense anyway with the talent we have over there and with Eberflus being a defensive guy and seeing how impressive he was with the Colts doing that. And Alan Williams, by the way, which I feel like we don't give enough credit to. I think 7 wins is the floor, and I'm not at 10 wins yet. I'm at 9. I think 9 is the ceiling. I think we can sneak into the playoffs on that. I think we can finish a game above 500, but I'm not ready to get to 10. I think there's too many situations where inexperience will come to bite us.
Even week 1 though, like Trey Lance has got Jimmy G in his rearview mirror. You know what I mean? That's a lot different than just handing over the keys, knowing you could make some mistakes. Like he might be playing a lot more lot tighter than he should. Like I think San Fran is up in the air. If Jimmy G starts that game, I think they beat us by 10 to 14 points, right? Like I truly believe that just because of how complete their roster is from 1 to 22, all their starters, or 23 if you want to talk about the slot being a starter now at this point. But yeah, overall, I just feel like Trey Lance, first regular season action as a starter, had a dog shit preseason. Like, I know you don't have all your weapons and stuff like that, but we're seeing him skip balls into people's feet. Like, I think that game is up for the taking. I think in a divisional game, I mean, even when you think about the Bills, the Colts had a really good game plan for the Bills. I think that the Colts almost beat them this past year. Like, they held them to a pretty low total and were able to go toe to toe with them. Like, that's the thing about a defense. Like, a really good defense is like fucking how forget who it was in The Last Dance, but how they described Dennis Rodman. He's just, Gary Payton. Dennis Rodman is just the fuck up person. Like, a really good defense is just the fuck up thing. Like, that puts you in different games that you should not be in, right? Like,
you went basketball on me for a minute. I appreciate the reference, but I think it might fly over a couple people's heads.
But honestly, like I think that, like, having if this defense can get to the level, I think it can, because Matt Eberflus has done nothing but prove he can churn out top 10 defenses without top overall picks and kind of a hodgepodge of guys for the most part of his career. Like, I don't know, man. A really good defense could put you in a lot of games that you shouldn't be. And then you think about divisional matchups; those are always closer than it should be. Aaron Rodgers doesn't have Devontae Adams anymore. Like, they're on the decline. They're going to have a really good defense. Could be a fucking 3 to 7 game. You know what I mean? But yeah, I'm just saying, like, I think this team really does have an opportunity to win a lot of games that they shouldn't.
Dude, just say it. Just say they got the juice. Just say it one time for me.
They got the juice, dude. I always said from the start, man. I said from the start, in a rebuilding season, the most important thing is clearly Justin Fields taking a leap forward. 4,000 yards would be great. I think 4,000 yards is kind of underwhelming at this point, right? Like, it's the old, like, that was the old marker. When Jay Cutler threw for fucking 4,000 yards, like, that was a big deal at that time, fucking 15 years ago. Now, like, you're seeing guys break 2, 3, 4 fucking quarterbacks break 5,000 yards. So I think that new marker really is 4,500, especially through 17 games. Like, if you were able to see Justin Field take huge leaps this year and they would only win 5 games, it would be a win. But if he takes huge leaps this year with a light schedule, like I always said, that last wild card spot, that 6 or 7 spot, like it's wide open in the NFC. All of the good quarterbacks are in the AFC, right? Like it's wide open.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree. We're gonna definitely touch on this a little bit more in the next episode. I just know we're rolling a little bit long here.
I didn't even realize we were going for an hour and 6 minutes.
Yeah, you definitely were just waffling on there for a minute, but I was letting you go, man. You're making good points, but like let's really dive deep into that next week.
It's not being a meathead. Like
it's not meathead at all. If you were being a meathead, I would cut you off immediately because I'm not into that shit.
If they were in the AFC, I wouldn't be talking like this. I'd be like, they're gonna get their dick rocked every single week. Like
there's no division in the AFC I'd feel confident about him in, except maybe the East. No. Maybe. And that's the fucking Bills. You'd be working for a wild card.
And until Detroit becomes good, like regularly, I will not believe in them. And I'm a huge Dan Campbell guy. I love it. But like Detroit is going to be dog shit in my eyes until they change that narrative. And it's going to take a few years of sustained success, not 1 year where they win 9 fucking games. So like, I still think Detroit is pretty far away. I do think that obviously there's a lot more flair with a bunch of first round draft picks, shit like that. But like another thing too, the Vikings, Kirk Cousins is still their quarterback. Like they've had all of that offensive talent every fucking year and they still suck dick. Like they're still a middle of the pack team. So why should I be forced to believe that that has changed? Why? The only team that has been the class of the NFC North for a long time is the fucking Packers. I hate it. And they, in my opinion, got worse on offense and a little bit better on defense. So, like, I think it's all wide open, dude. 2018, I know there was a lot more high-profile signings and stuff like that, but no one thought the Bears were going to be good. So, like I said, I have tempered expectations. I could see them only winning 5 games. I could see it going south and, like, being like, oh, yeah, our top level talent is not there. But I don't think the teams that we're matching up against this year are so overwhelming. Like the only team on the schedule that I see as an overwhelming game for the Chicago Bears is the Buffalo Bills. And it would be the Niners too if Trey Lance wasn't starting.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. And I think with week 1 coming up, I think Trey Lance is in for a mollywhopping, honestly, from the Bears front.
And he was who I wanted the Bears to get. I love fucking.
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna bring that up at some point, but I feel like next episode we're gonna really dive into a lot of this stuff. You're bringing up a lot of really good stuff, Lucas, but we're already at that like hour point, so we should probably roll on. People are probably falling asleep at this point or just waffling on about something, but unless you have like any final points, I feel like this is a good spot to stop it just because we have another week of not football that we're really going to have to fill in some info on. And I feel like this is a really good talking point. And I wouldn't mind actually maybe before the season starting, possibly getting an Ask Us Anything just to maybe get some ideas and hot takes in. But, this has been the Barely There podcast. I'm Duke Coughlin. I'm joined with Lucas Perfetti as always. You can follow me at that pod guy Duke on Twitter. You can follow Lucas at Lucas Perfetti 46. You can follow the pod at Barely There Pod. Be sure to shoot us a 5-star rating, review, Apple, Spotify. It helps us everywhere, man. It helps with the algorithm. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube. We actually are getting pretty close to I think like 30 subscribers. We're kind of hovering around there, and that definitely helps us with the algorithm as well. Gets us up the search bar when people just broadly look for like Chicago Bears podcast. So it would help us a ton. As always, we will be back next week. We might be looking into what we're going to be doing for regular season schedule. I don't want to say anything yet because I don't want to put our asses to the fire quite yet because me and Lucas really haven't gotten a chance to talk about it. But we will be getting a lot of content out moving forward once we get to the NFL season. Next week, obviously, we might be a little bit of filler, but we'll get her going. But anyway, I got nothing else. Bear down. Week 1 is inching in, and till next time.
Lions picking the top 5 every single year. They always suck cock. Bear down.